let's get Linus Torvalds' thoughts on his Linux successor and maintainer burnout, which has been a topic that keeps getting brought up in these events, and there have been many conversations about, especially with some long-term maintainers deciding to step down over the last few months. How does this pave the way for new maintainers and developers, and what challenges will it bring to the Linux kernel? Here's a recent conversation that Linus had with Dirk, who is the head of the open source office at Verizon. Let's get into what Linus thinks about maintainer burnout and the Linux kernel.
And I'm sure some clueless young person will decide how hard can it be and start his own operating system in Rust or in something else. And if he keeps at it for many, many decades, or she, and many, many decades, hey, and I'm looking forward to seeing that.
To save you from bad quotes when you say some clueless person, that is a reflection on your own past.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you have to be all kinds of stupid to say, I can do this, right? Because it turns out, yes, I'm still doing it 33 years later, and I couldn't have done it without all the literally tens of thousands of other people anyway. And the only reason I ever started was that I didn't know how hard it would be. But that's what makes it fun, right?
Yeah. So that is actually the perfect bridge to the next set of questions that I have for you. So you said the Maintainer Summit is tomorrow, and an evergreen topic that I think comes up at every Maintainer Summit, and certainly that I bring up in our conversations every other year, is this bigger question of burnout. Yep. So the maintainers are an aging group, strangely. Some of us have, not quite as much or the right color of hair anymore.
Hey, gray is the right color.
Gray is a great color, yes. But the Linux ecosystem, the kernel development community, there is absolutely no sign of slowing down. It's accelerating in many ways, Rust being one of them. And so the question that I always ask myself is, time is kind of cruel. It won't stop for us. And as the maintainers get older, as burnout becomes a bigger problem, is it about time to talk about mini Linus, about the successor, the next generation?
We have talked about that forever, and some people are probably still disappointed that I'm still here. No, I mean, it is absolutely true that kernel maintainers are aging. And the positive spin of that is, how many projects do any of you know about where you have maintainers, not just me, who have literally been around for over 3 decades? It is very unusual. So then saying, hey, people burn out and go away, yes, that's true, but that's kind of normal. What is not normal is that people actually stay around for decades. That's the unusual thing, and I think that's, to some degree, a good sign. But obviously it also does mean that as a new developer, as a young person, it can seem kind of hard to become part of this when you see all these people who have been around for decades. At the same time, I think in open source, the Linux kernel is actually very unusual in just how many developers we have. So it is very true that we have maintainers who have been around for a long time and who are getting gray. But at the same time, if you actually look at the statistics of the developers we have, very few, if any, projects have 1,000 new or 1,000 developers being involved in every single release, and the releases being every 3 months or so. So I think we do have a fairly healthy developer subsystem. Like the whole monkey dance about developers, we've got them. The fact that we also have these old graying people around I don't see that as a huge problem.
I'm not trying to say it's a problem. So what I'm trying to say is, you've been doing this for 33 years. I don't want to be morbid, but I think in 33 years you may no longer be doing this, yes, possibly. Yeah. And even though I would love to still do the conference circuit in 33 years, but we come in on our walkers, it's going to be awesome. But what I'm saying is, in order to be the king of Linux, the main maintainer, you have to have a lot of experience. And the backup right now is Greg KH, who has even less hair than the two of us, and is about the same age as we are. Greg, are you in the room? I apologize. You can punch me later. But what I'm saying is, how do we get the next generation to gain the experience so that in 10, 15, 20, 30 years, your role can be handed off to somebody else. It's that sustainability that I'm asking about.
I think part of the issue with us having a lot of developers is that we've always had a lot of people who are very competent and could step up. I mean, you mentioned Greg, but the thing is, Greg hasn't always been Greg. Before Greg, there's been Andrews and Allens, and after Greg, there will be Shannons and Steves. Who knows? There are people around who have been around for decades, and the real issue is you have to have a person or a group of people that people in the development community can trust. And part of trust is fundamentally about having been around for long enough that people know how you work. But long enough does not need to be 30 years. We have very core developers that are like top-level maintainers for major subsystems that have come up in just a few years. It's not instant. Nobody's going to claim that. But there are new people who come in, and 3 years later, they are a main developer. It is not impossible at all. Being a maintainer is not as glorious as it sometimes can seem, right? And there's a lot of people who would be more than happy to get new people in and come and help. And sometimes people are more afraid of kernel development than they really need to.
I am sure a lot of people are currently Googling Shannon and Steve as first names of kernel developers to know who you're talking about.
They were random names I made up. Just out of interest, how many people here are actually kernel developers, have sent in patches? Kernel developers are odd. We know that. But I mean, we're not so unusual as to be unheard of. And it is the most interesting thing you can do, I'm convinced, still.
Yes, yeah, we all know kernel development is the peak interest of things a person can do. So I'm sorry, I should not have repeated that sentence.
Thanks to the Linux Foundation for hosting this event and conversation. If you want more of this video or you found the conversation interesting between Linus and Dirk, then check out the link in the description below for more of the video, even though there's an acknowledgement of definite maintainer burnout in the Linux kernel, as well as other open source projects in general. We also have an understanding that there's a healthy ecosystem of developers and maintainers with a constant new influx. Also, languages like Rust are introducing more people to the Linux kernel project and open source development, at least on the hardware side of things, and is met by Linus's optimism for continual growth and eventually a successor to his project as a main organizer and maintainer for the project. With burnout still being in mind and a very real thing in the community, there's a very strong core of maintainers and developers, according to Linus, so it doesn't seem like they're too worried about the continual development of the kernel. So let me know what you think about maintainer burnout and fatigue. Catch me in a great community on Discord, and I'll catch you in another video. Thanks for watching.